Hi, I'm a fire lookout. Every year I love coming to the tower, but I'm not the only one that loves coming to this tower. We have many ringtails in the region, and for many generations and year round, the ringtails love coming up to this tower, and to them it's just a big tree house, a playground, a sanctuary, a place to hang out. With large ears and wide around the eyes, that gives the ringtails excellent night vision and makes them great hunters. They do establish territories, and they're also active throughout the year. Ringtails are very agile climbers. They use that long striped tail as a counterbalance. They climb trees and very steep cliffs. And as I said, I get a lot of ringtails coming to the tower, and so yes, they can even climb the frames of the tower. But this story is about a very special ringtail, a ringtail that had a very challenging beginning in life. Our story begins in the early part of July 2024. I was in the tower and I needed to take care of some chores at the base of the tower, and so as I started to go down the steps, I heard some funny noises. I looked to my right, and there's this cute face staring at me. Right away I knew it was an infant ringtail, but something was amiss. Ringtails are nocturnal. This little critter should have been with its mother or in a den. Knowing all the animals in the area, I knew none of the mothers would abandon a child, and they would sacrifice their life before they leave the youngster behind, so something was definitely wrong. I decided to go back up into the tower and give a little time, but shortly I heard a lot of thump and bang and then nothing. I raced out on the catwalk. I looked down below on the cement, and there on the cement was the ringtail. That's a fall of 35 feet. I raced down to the cement and ran up to the ringtail. I didn't see any blood. Nothing appeared to be broken. I picked it up by the tail. There's little poop, little pee, so I figured it's got to be alive or something. So I decided to bring it back up to the tower. In the tower, I put it in a tub with a little bit of water and food. Still a lot of emotion. It was just kind of just laying there. So I figured I'd get a little time and see what happens. After a period of time, it started moving around a little bit, but it seemed a little dazed and just didn't want to eat or drink or anything. So I didn't know if there was any kind of internal injuries, but now what do I do? My shift was ending the next day. I figured, well, maybe I'll just bring it down to Project Wildlife and see what they could do for it. But then I remembered the San Diego Zoo and the San Diego Natural History Museum had a team of people that were studying ringtails the year before, so I contacted them and see what they had to say. They connected me up with Project Wildlife, with the San Diego Humane Society, and after showing them pictures and how much the ringtail had fell, they said, no, we want that ringtail right away. So out of their kind heart, they put together a team and they sent somebody 60 miles to the tower to pick up the ringtail. It took a while for the person from Project Wildlife to reach the tower. When they got there, we came to the tower and we transferred the ringtail into a carrier. While doing so, we checked out to see what sex it was. So, being a female, we decided to give it the name of Irene. So now it was time for get Irene down to the hospital. Few people have a chance to see a ringtail, and I guess when Irene made it down to Project Wildlife, she was quite the star. Everybody loved her, and they checked her out very thoroughly. Apparently there was no major injuries. I guess she was just a little stiff and probably had a headache. So after several days of recovering, it was time to send her back up to me so I could go ahead and release Irene back out into the wild. When Irene made it back to the tower in the carrier, it was obvious she was fully recovered, very anxious to get back into the wild, and she was very anxious to let me know in a lot of ringtail terms. I brought Irene down to some brush and some trees where she could get off into the vegetation and go out back out into the wild. Ran right up in a tree and gave me some very dirty looks, and I decided to let her go from there. Now my concerns turn to Irene, the orphan, the youngster. Life for Ringtail is already pretty tough, but here was a young girl that was an orphan. We had no idea who the mother was at the time, and she was off on her own. So how would she survive? Would she deal with the world in front of her? Foxes are very prevalent in that area, and they are a very strong danger. It was a new world for Irene, and now it was up to her to figure out what she was going to do. How was she going to survive? I monitored the cameras constantly and could see her periodically, and even saw her sometimes with other ringtails. But she still needed a guide. She needed to learn how to be a ringtail. Someone had to show her and take her under their wing. Otherwise, she would never survive. So how would that happen? What was going to happen to Irene's future? There is a small backstory. Ringtails have been coming to the tower for many, many generations. And there's one particular ringtail named Gamma. This is a matriarch. She's had many, many litters. She's a very dedicated, very serious mother and always taken very good care of her kids. There's a good chance that Irene's mother was an offspring from Gamma. So I was to find out very soon. I should not have worried too much about the future of Irene. One of the few days I saw one of the videos from the catwalk on the tower, and I was extremely excited. There in front of me was Gamma with her 2 new kits, but also with her was Irene. Apparently Gamma had adopted Irene, taken her under her wing, and now had joined the family and was going to learn all about becoming a ringtail. It was exciting throughout the remainder of the season to see Gamma, her kids, and Irene all having a great time. Irene learning more and more skills, having a wonderful time playing with the other kits. They were just a regular family. After all, Gamma was the grandmother, but what was the future for Irene? How would she fare over the winter time? What will things be like for next year? Will Irene make it? Opening the tower in 2025, I was anxious to see what animals return. Got the cameras all set up, and it didn't take long to see Irene. But unfortunately, there was something going on. I noticed her left hind leg. She was limping, she was hopping, she wasn't putting the foot down. Looks like she probably got attacked by a fox, but she still made it to the tower. Unfortunately, by the rules, I couldn't catch her and have her taken in for help, so I had to come up with another plan. I decided to give Irene as much support as I possibly could and give her time to slowly heal so she wouldn't have to go down to the water trough and take a chance of her getting captured by the foxes. So I started to watch her for a long period of time, and over that period of time, she started to slowly get better. It took a long time for that leg to heal enough that she could start walking on it. Also, during that time, I was watching Irene very closely and see how she was behaving, but there's something else I noticed. I looked very carefully, and there, Irene was lactating. Irene was a mother. It took many, many weeks of watching Irene, making sure she was okay. She slowly got better, and periodically some of the other ringtails would come up to visit, but finally something special happened. Finally, in mid-July, Irene decided it's time to bring the kids to the tower. So first she brought up Jack, then she brought up Jenny, and being the caring mother she was, she made sure that they made it all the way up and brought them all the way over to the play area. Here we get to see the new kits. Jenny is on the left. She's got that small dark spot on her forehead. And Jack is on the right. He's got a dark stripe down between his eyes. They were curious and ready to play. Play is very critical to young ringtails. They need to defend themselves against predators and different kinds of attacks from both birds and mammals, and also against other ringtails when they pass through other territories. This play can also enhance their skills in hunting. The play usually involved mostly the youngsters, but actually it could be the whole family. I've actually seen other ringtails from other areas that come up and visit. I've had Omega, the father, do a lot of play with the kids. I've also seen Romeo, a ringtail from another area come up and play with the kids as well. And even great-grandmother Gamma. Nick's come up, which is a great-grandfather. He didn't so much play as much just kind of hang out. But throughout the nights, almost every night, the kids were out there on the catwalk just raising a ruckus. Ringtail kids can be pretty rambunctious at times, and they were tearing things up, so I decided I'd try giving them a tennis ball. They absolutely loved it. Sometimes it was like a soccer tournament, sometimes a basketball game. Many times they played by themselves, other times they'd play chase. Sometimes they even dropped the ball off the tower, and I have to return it the next day. Surprisingly, the tennis ball has lasted through the season. I've only had to replace it once. I do keep some spares just in case I need them. Ringtails can be surprisingly curious. One of their favorite things to do was trying to sneak up and peek in the window, and they were always trying to get inside the cab. One thing for sure, the kids always had a ton of energy, and they used every ounce of it. They would terrorize everything or anybody who was on the catwalk. They would just have fun all night. They'd carry on, and it's hard to say who was winning, but I don't think they cared. Most like the Ringtails were always up on the catwalk playing one way or the other. Sometimes they could get really noisy. There were several times when I would be woken up at night. I have to go out and yell at them like a bunch of teenagers. They're making so much noise. But they're always having fun. Of course, Jack was usually the troublemaker, tormenting his sister. And Jack spent a lot of time picking on poor old Irene. Wouldn't give her any kind of rest. I have no idea what this one's all about. Sometimes one of the older ringtails, like Gamma or Omega, or even Irene, would come up and try to take a nap, and the kids would be running around playing, and sometimes they do an attack. But this seems to be a dog pile of some sort, but as long as they're having fun and bonding as a family, and the kids are enjoying it. I know Irene always loved playing with her kids. Even when they were really young, she spent lots of time with them, showing them lots of skills. And I think sometimes it was payback from all the times they were tormenting her. Everybody knows kids can get on your nerves sometimes, even for ringtails. As much as they love to play, and sometimes they do attacks on Omega or Irene or Gamma, sometimes they just have enough. So here we have Omega, who got tired of Jack bothering him, and he decided to give him a little swat and just say, "Hey, I've had enough." There came a time when it couldn't be all fun and games. Irene needed to get the kids out and take them out and let them start learning how to hunt. So she'd take them down from the tower periodically, and they go on hunting expeditions. Sometimes she would catch food, sometimes she'd let the kids catch food. But there's also the danger of the foxes, so everybody had to be alert. From the beginning, Irene would periodically go out and hunt and bring food up for the kids. When she started taking them out to hunt, initially she would catch the main prey, and then take it back to the tower. As they got more experience over the weeks, the kids would start catching things themselves, and either Irene would bring food up or the kids would bring something up to the tower. A lot of times they'd play with it, they'd pounce on it, but eventually they would eat it. Here Jenny has proudly caught a bird on her own. She brought it to the tower. Of course, she's going to play with it and carry on with it, eventually eat it. But again, as the season went on, each of the animals learned how to go out, hunt on their own, and learn more survival skills. There's always been the dangers of the foxes down below the tower and over by the water trough, so they had to learn how to dodge the foxes and get out into the wild and not get eaten. Here Jack has caught himself a bird, but silly Jack always seemed to have more fun playing with his food than actually getting down to eating his food. He'd make quite a mess on the catwalk, and sometimes he'd spend all evening playing before he ever got around to eating it. As the weeks and months moved on, I began to see that Jack and Jenny were becoming more confident, gaining more skills, and more often they were out wandering the hills, exploring, and learning new experiences, sometimes alone, sometimes together. The bonds of Ringtail family are extremely strong. Of all the families that come to the tower, I've always seen mothers that have been very caring for their children. That was also shown in Gamma when she adopted Irene when she was orphaned, and Gamma took her in and raised her as a ringtail. And Gamma did an outstanding job because Irene in herself has become an outstanding mother. I did witness a situation a while back that really touched my heart. Unfortunately, I couldn't catch a lot of video on the situation because I was in the middle of it, but I'm going to explain the story here. As I mentioned, ringtails pretty much are nocturnal. It's important for their safety to be able to make sure that they use the cover at night for their protection. When they're in the tower, they would usually come up around 8 p.m., spend all night playing and having fun and learning, etc. But they always made sure they left by sunrise. On this particular day, though, it was time to go, and the kids were still playing. This was back when they were still very young. Irene tried to signal the time for the kids to come down, and so she went on down from the tower and hoped the kids would follow. But for some reason, they stayed behind. On this particular day, I had arrived from my shift at the tower, and it was approximately about 5:30, just before sunrise, so I started coming up the steps. Well, by me coming up the steps, the youngsters saw me. They ran inside the shelter, and they stayed there. They were afraid. Gamma was waiting impatiently on the second level of the stairs. So as I got up there, I didn't even know that the ringtails were inside the box. But when I went to look at the water dish, there they were inside, and they were frightened. So I backed off, and I hoped that they would try to leave. Well, one ran down to Irene, and she took it the rest of the way down the ladder and hid it down in the trees down below the tower. However, the other one stayed hidden. It was too frightened. It did get out of the box, but it went underneath the catwalk and was hiding on the frame. Irene kept calling, and it just stayed. Irene kept trying to get it to come down, and it just stayed. So I backed further around the catwalk, and next thing you know, Irene come racing up the frame of the tower, and then she tried to show the youngster how to go down the leg of the tower. I'm sure Irene was having flashbacks about the time that she fell from the tower. Irene knew she needed to take action because the youngster wasn't going to move. She grabbed it by the neck and started crawling along the frame and zigzagged down all the way along the frame of the tower, dangling the youngster by the neck, sometimes hanging on very, very precariously. My heart was racing every step that Irene was taking and every turn she took. Sometimes she was just very, very carefully balancing on the beams. It took a while for her to get all the way down, but we finally succeeded, and she took the youngster over to the same tree she put the first youngster, gathered up her kids, and then headed off to their den. The story of Irene taught me a lot about ringtails. Gamma adopted her orphan granddaughter, took her in and taught her all the skills she needed to survive in the wild and be an excellent ringtail. Irene, despite her injuries and challenges, she too became an excellent mother and did everything right to raise her children, teach them her skills, and taught them how they could survive in the wild. Over the years, I've had many ringtails come to the tower, spend the season, and I learned much from them. But nothing has taught me as much as the story of Irene. The resilience, the dedication, and the patience. She was truly an inspiration. The ringtails come to the tower year-round. It is their sanctuary. It is a place for them to feel safe. And every year when I leave the tower at the end of the season, I wonder, how will they survive? Will I see the familiar faces next year? Some will move on and develop their own families and move to new territories. Some will find the fate of nature and they may never return. But I always have my hopes that hopefully, maybe next year, Jenny will come back as a mother. I want to express my appreciation to Scott Tremer and J.P. Montagnier for providing behavior information on ringtails, and over the past several years giving me plenty of information to be able to interface with these animals. The story of Irene is very special to me. Over the past year, I went through 61,000 videos and images to tell her very special story. Since 2017, I have accumulated 437,000 videos and images using as many as 15 trail cameras. So there's still a lot of stories to be told of the 15 to 20 ringtails that live around Los Pinos Mountain. I want to especially give a heartfelt thank you to the staff of the San Diego Humane Society Project Wildlife. When contacted about Irene's fall from the tower, they quickly coordinated sending a staff member 60 miles to Los Pinos Lookout. Under their care, Irene the Ringtail received lots of attention and lots of loving care. It's through their efforts Irene the Ringtail received a second chance in life. I imagine it's not often you can see the successes of your work. I thank you, and Irene thanks you, by raising a new generation of ringtails. I hope this small video of how Irene's family has flourished will be some small special reward for all the hard work that you do. So thank you very, very much.